Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the amazing Russ Garcia.
Are we on?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh.
Flying free, how I love it, it's the way I wanna be. Flying free, it's the way to do it, come and swing together with me. Just keep cool, just feel the beat of my heartstrings. We'll fly high into the sky.
He has played probably every instrument that exists. He understands it. He wrote the book on big band arranging. A lot of people don't realize this. Most of the guys I work with in New York actually learned how to do what they do out of Russ Garcia's books. I mean, when we were touring in the States, it was so exciting because so many people would show up at the actual gigs with their books. And they were earmarked and, you know, tattered, and they would have Russ sign them. It really was beautiful.
Russell's books were the books because they were in every university in America. They were taught. It was like, this is how you write. This is how you write 2-part, 3, right through to 7-part, and for orchestras. And they were the books. And he opened up my mind and my head to a whole new world of music. And of course, I then furthered and went overseas and studied with, as it turns out, some of his students. John Williams, a famous composer, was one of Russell's students. He gave Quincy Jones one of his first gigs. Russell is one of the nicest people, as well as being an incredible musician that you will ever meet. And his wife, Gina, is absolutely adorable.
We visit the orphanages, and if you've ever been to the orphanage where you have, you know, access to 100 children suddenly, the first thing they want to do is they want you to hold them and to give them some love. And I said to this director at this old people's home, I said, this is what these old folks need. They need to give some love and get some love back. And if you could coordinate the orphanages with the home for the aged, it would be a wonderful thing.
These children just run up and grab you and cling to you, and they don't want you to put them down. It's heartbreaking, but you can't take 100 children. We were going to go on pilgrimage. We received Shogi's shortest sentence. It said, postpone pilgrimage, that's all. And because the Suez crisis with England, and they closed the canal and such, and they weren't accepting pioneers. But then we went a little later, and it was so wonderful because there was only 10 from the west and 10 from the east, and we lived in the Pilgrim House and had a hand of the cause, having meals with us every day. We had a key to the Shrine of the Bab. We could go in any time of night or day. We got to sleep overnight at Baha'u'llah's house in Baji. What a fantastic experience. I had done everything in Hollywood, and so we decided one day we were going to sail across the Pacific Ocean and visit Baha'i friends on all the different islands. We were going to sail around the world, but we got stuck in New Zealand.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Gina, I bought her a sailboat. Not a real big one, but...
Only a 30-footer, but imagine getting a sailboat for your birthday and then finding out that maybe he wants to go sailing around the world. I thought he was insane. He came home from Universal Studios and he said, Gina, what would you think if we sold everything and bought a little sailboat and go visit our Baha'i family around the world? And I said, you're out of your mind. I can't even swim, which was true.
So Russ said, you can learn to swim. When we were getting ready to go, I phoned this old Scots retired sea captain that taught navigation in Los Angeles. I said, how much is your navigation course? And he told me. I said, fine. I said, how long would it take me? He said, oh, a year maybe, depending on you. I said, I'm leaving in 9 days. What can we do? He said, come on over. We didn't have sat-navs there where you press a button at that time and it gives you your latitude and longitude. I had to learn the old way with a sextant, you know, where you shoot the angle between the horizon and the sun or moon or planet or star and go into the tables at the exact time and figure out where you are.
For people who think nothing's going to go wrong, it's an absolute ridiculous. It's absolutely impossible because there's always something that will go wrong.
We ran into a hurricane the first night we started on our trip. Sails tore, it broke the boom, and the hurricane came right through where we'd been.
I really feel we were blessed and looked after because we were very, I mean very, very inexperienced. We had to go back to Hollywood because the boat had to be repaired. And they said, oh, that's Baha'u'llah saying you shouldn't go. And I said, no, that's Baha'u'llah saying, are you sure you want to go? I think he tested us at the very beginning to let us realize, hey guys, it ain't gonna be all moonlight and roses out there. And I think that was very good, because it made me realize it wasn't going to be just a piece of cake.
We were really green. We learned on the job. You have to be either very brave or a little crazy to go across the ocean in a small sailboat.
Well, our very first maiden voyage was in June '66. Our boat had just been finished. We had just named her the Dawnbreaker with a very beautiful ceremony. We had this gorgeous flag that a Baha'i sculptor had designed for us, and we lifted this beautiful flag with all the different colored stripes in the back. It was symbolic of the races of man, and we know it's only one race, but we have different colored skin. And then he had a big blue circle, symbolic of the earth, symbolic of the seas, and in the middle a white star of unity. And it was such a lovely thing, and everywhere we went, when we flew that flag, people would ask, what country? And then we would say, oh, we're citizens of the world. We're Baha'is. So
I'm a Baha'i. I'm a universal. Our boat was built in Florida, so we went through the Florida Keys and the Bahamas and Jamaica and down through Panama Canal and all across the Pacific Islands, bringing Baha'i to the people. It's good because the Pacific Islanders love music, and we brought all these songs and taught them songs. They're still singing a lot of our songs in the islands we hear. Toko zanini nalabawanki, lele langala kukana, and so forth.
Many years ago, ancient history to most of you, I won World War II single-handed in Europe. And after the war was over, I went to a Red Cross place. They gave us donuts and coffee, you know. And I went in there and they had some recordings. And they had something of Diz and Charlie Parker.
And this had all happened while I was away in the war, and I was so flabbergasted to hear the way they played a new style of jazz. I had never met Dizzy, but when we got back to America, they put us in Camp Kilmer and said nobody is to leave camp under any circumstances. When it got dark, another musician and I snuck under the fence and hitchhiked into New York City and went down and heard Dizzy and Charlie Parker playing. And just with our mouths open, it was played so wonderfully. And I never dreamed that we would be close friends one day. In fact, he was my Baha'i brother. Dizzy and I were very good friends. I was A&R man for a while at Verve Records when we had Dizzy under contract, and so I had to plan recording sessions for him and such. Very bright, very serious, but he could also be a real clown, is how he got his nickname Dizzy. You know, I knew him so well I could tell a lot of stories that weren't in his books and that nobody had heard before.
Good evening and welcome to the Town Hall. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ross Garcia in a tribute to Dizzy Gillespie.
Somebody as a gag had some buttons printed up, Diz for president, and it spread like wildfire, especially in California, which is kind of kooky anyway, you know. He said if he was elected, he would change the color of the White House. He said we might call it the Blues House. He'd eliminate all income tax with the national lottery. He talked about disarmament, and somebody said, "Why are you running for president?" He said, "Because we need one." Secretary of State, we want Bo Diddley. He said, Miles Davis should be in charge of the CIA. Ray Charles in the Library of Congress. And he said Ellington should be Minister of State because he can con anybody. And he said, maybe we'll let women run the country. They'll do it anyhow. We were backstage with Dizzy in Munich at a jazz festival, and George Shearing, blind pianist, was across the room, and he said, "Are you people talking about Baha'i? Let me in on this, you know." And he got quite interested, and so we got him books in Braille. He's been blind since birth. He walked over to George Shearing and put his arm around George. He said, "George, probably nobody's ever told you, but you're black." I think Dizzy always did this right after the first number, so I think we should. I'd like to introduce the fellows in the band. Murray, this is George.
It's not Mary or Jim or Jake or Sam who's behind you to the right of you. That's you. Every single one of you. The blessed duty is talking about.
Bill Sears has been a very special person to us. He again is one of these hands of the cause that were very special souls, and we kind of feel like he's the one that's really encouraged us to do so many of the things that we do today.
We felt like we really had a special, close relationship with Bill Sears. And then we find out he makes everyone feel this way.
Yes.
You can achieve the impossible. It isn't something casual. It's there all the time for you. You just have to arise and believe that and start to transform yourself. And every day say to the Blessed Beauty, Baha'u'llah, help me today and send me to the right place. I'm going to change somebody's heart.
And it was so wonderful because we talked and, well, we listened a lot. And he said, you know, it's not enough. We're telling a few people at firesides here and there about Baha'i, but we've got to use the arts and the media to reach masses of people. So from that day on, we've dedicated our lives to using whatever talents we have to try to build this beautiful world and try to spread these wonderful teachings that are the medicine that this insane world needs at the moment to make it well.
1, 2, 3.
Well, I used to do a lot of things for the wonderful Baha'i Seals and Crofts.
Summer breeze makes me
and they couldn't read music, but what wonderful, great musicians they were as far as playing, just natural. They'd give me a cassette of what they had recorded, and I have to listen to and write down what they'd done, and then I'd write for the strings or whatever we were going to add and go into the studio. The musicians come in and read it right off. And Jimmy Seal said, "Russ, you've done more in 4 hours than we've done in 9 months." I used to be a ukulele player for Baha'i. On all the islands, it was handy when we were sailing through the islands, you know. Guitar took up a lot of room on a boat, so Gina bought a little baritone ukulele. She learned a couple of chords, but I seemed to be able to find the right chords for every song, so I got stuck with being the ukulele player.
I remember when Russ and Gina Garcia came to Samoa, sailing to Samoa on their yacht, and then they came to our island, and especially in my village in Savai. This is the biggest island of Samoa, and they were doing a meeting. They were gathering all of us young people and children to an evening of entertainment evening, and they were telling us a little bit about their belief about the Baha'i faith, the teachings of the oneness of humanity, the oneness of religion, and the oneness of God. And then they sing some beautiful songs. They have melodious voices. Russell was strumming his ukulele and sang Toko Sani in Africa. And they actually taught us these songs.
And we found Baha'is on 2 different islands in the Galapagos. And we couldn't communicate too well with them because they spoke Spanish and we spoke English. But we had a wonderful rapport because we knew we were all working for the same beautiful goals, you know, to make this a beautiful world for the people of every religion, every race, every country.
We lived a lot in what they call lava-lavas or sulus, which I would put, you know, to cover your legs, because in a lot of the villages it was not considered dignified to see, you know, the legs of a woman. And, you know, in the Western world they would wear shorts and things like that. I might do that on the boat when we're out at sea, but never when we went ashore.
Before Gina and Russell came to Samoa, I was quite a confused young man, because I couldn't believe why there were so many churches in this small village of ours. Especially on Sunday, when people go to the church and the neighbors, they all go to different direction to go to all different churches. But when Gina and Russell came to Samoa, they taught us that there should be only one religion of God, and there should be one church in the village, and everyone should go to one particular church.
When we went into an island group, we'd always pick up a couple of local Baha'is. Like in Fiji, we picked up a couple of Fijians to travel around the other islands with us. And it was wonderful because we would go and anchor in a lagoon in a remote island, and they would go ashore, and the people would always say, "Are you working on that boat?" And they'd say, "No, we're guests." And people would hardly believe them. They'd even say, "Do you mean you sit down and eat at the same table?" Because
that's interesting.
They'd had been occupied by countries where that was frowned on, I guess. And so when we went ashore, we were welcome because they knew we had no real prejudice against the local people. And it's amazing. We found Baha'is in very remote places. I walked into a village here, and the children all started screaming, and they ran up and shouting to me. Some of them were trying to rub the white off my skin because
they'd never seen a white man.
One island in the outer Fiji group went to see this school teacher who was one of the few people that could speak English on the island. And we told him about Baha'i, and we left him a new era, and we thought we'd done nothing on that island. We left, and 6, 8 months later, in Suva, this fellow went up and knocked on the door of the Baha'i faith, and Irene or Victor Williams greeted him, and he said, "I'm a Baha'i." He had his new era. He became a Baha'i all by himself on a remote island, and he became one of the finest teachers in Fiji, teaching Baha'i. So you never know. When we got to Suva on our trip, they said, "Oh, what a shame, you sailed through the Lao group, and our big goal is to get some believers in the Lao group." And so we handed them 4 cards of believers in the Onlakemba was here.
Almost 6 years, actually, before we finally settled in New Zealand. The coming to New Zealand was the worst trip I ever had in all that time. When you have 45-foot waves, you're scared. I mean, I have to be absolutely honest, I was scared. I'm not athletic at all. I would rather paint. You know, I'm an indoor girl, I always used to say. But I don't regret, however, doing it for one moment. We were actually anchored in Suva, in the Fiji group at the time, and one of the big cruise ships came in, you know, the ones where they have an orchestra that plays, and a lot of musicians were from New Zealand, were on this big cruise boat that had come in. And of course they go around to all the different hotels, and while they were there at the hotel where we happened to be with our Dawnbreaker, they heard that, you know, there was a musician and a writer living on a sailboat, and they knew his name.
See, the public never heard of me, but in the music profession, I'm known. I wrote two textbooks,
right,
which are in 5 different languages all over the world. And they had my books, and they had albums that I'd done. And so they asked if we would be interested in coming to New Zealand and doing some radio, TV, and speaking at schools and doing concerts around the country. And I said, of course. New Zealand kind of found us. I think we were meant to be here.
Developed a course that we originally started out with calling it Moral Excellence. And we thought, you know, this is something that hasn't been taught for many, many years, as far as I know, in the education system. So we thought we would try to approach a few schools and a few people. And we found moral education doesn't seem to appeal to a lot of people. And when we changed the title, the material is exactly the same. We changed the title to Life Skills. All of a sudden, we're teaching at 3 schools, and it's being used at 4 other schools just in our own Bay of Islands area.
But the way we teach the children, we do it with songs and raps and stories and games.
And
the children love it, and they're learning it, and it's having an effect on these children.
Persistence means to keep trying over and over. Keep doing it. You don't give in. Failure doesn't worry you. Failure, you keep doing it. Okay, genius is inspiration. 1% inspiration. Okay, you're the genius. You explain.
I'm not a genius.
I'm a genius. You're a genius, are you, Bill? Yeah.
These kids really love what we do. They believe what we say, and they practice. The headmaster said, "It's wonderful. I used to go walkabout all the time." He said, "But I don't have to lock anything up now. Purposely, I left money on my desk for a couple of weeks, and it just stayed there. It didn't disappear." He said, "So you're having an effect."
He says, but he really noticed we were having an impact when the school bully went and said to another child at school, "Look, I'm sorry, that was real rude of me." And he said, because we had just covered courtesy, and he said, and to see this happen, he thought that was really wonderful.
There were numerous other schools that they used to go to. They used to have a schedule of Monday at this school, Tuesday at that school, Wednesday at this school.
And we've been doing Tati for 20-some years, this Maori school. And now when I go into town, I'll see somebody driving a big truck that's one of our kids, and the guy that cuts my hair is was one of our students. The people working in the supermarket, people working as carpenter's helper. Some of these people are from families that haven't worked for 4 or 5 generations, but these kids are all out there doing it and living a good, happy, productive life.
And you know, for Gina, to get out of bed early in the morning to get to school was always a big sacrifice.
They're using our course in Europe, England,
Australia,
all over
America,
the country in New Zealand.
Yeah.
So it's kind of spreading.
We are sisters and brothers, we are a coat of many colors. You and me, me and you and me, we are one family.
Someone had recommended us as nominees for this, they call it the Queen's Service Medal, and for us it was for music, our service to music. We just got a letter in the mail saying that we had been nominated and would we be interested in accepting this, and of course we were honored and overwhelmed that anybody would think that we deserved the Queen's Service Medal, so we said, oh yes.
I worked in New Zealand conducting the symphonies in the different cities, but now after all these years we go overseas for 5 months at least every year, and I work in California, in Canada, in Prague, in Munich. We work in China too, but we don't get paid for that.
This is my certificate. They made me a professor of music at Chongqing University in China because I lecture there every time we go to China. Even at my age, with all this gray hair, I'm still working flat out all over the world.
Enoch Kalinga had come over to do some very special meetings. He is a very special person for the Baha'is because he has a rank that is called the Hand of the Cause, and these are very special, I would say, spiritual people. And they travel mostly all around the world and encourage the Baha'is, and well, they're marvelous individuals.
Enoch just glowed with love for all people.
When we were in Suva, and he was speaking at a meeting that was scheduled in a little village just outside Suva. And we had rented this very big hall, and as we arrived, the room was just packed with people. And all Enoch did was just walk into the room, and he smiled. He never said a word. And the next thing we knew, the people just stood up like they were one body, and they went wild. They screamed and they shouted and they cheered, and we just couldn't believe it. I actually found I had tears running down my face. It was, I'm even moved now. It was such a moving experience.
So we think of him in a very special way. We offered to take him from Nandi up to Lautoka
in our
sailboat. And so once Russell got it out of, into the open water, he said to Enoch Kalinga, he said, would you like to take the wheel? And Enoch said, oh, would I? And so he took the helm and he sailed her all the way into Lautoka.
It was a beautiful day with smooth water and nice light breeze, and we had several Fijians aboard. They were playing their guitars and singing. We started to sing, Enoch Kalinga, Enoch Kalinga, Enoch Kalinga, hand of the cause. They were so overjoyed to see him, and he was so overjoyed he had tears in his eyes too.
We are remembering the words of Baha'u'llah himself. He said that the city is the home of the body, but the country is the home of the soul.
I can't put it in words, but I always feel entirely at home with indigenous people, and I've met them all over the world, from the Eskimos to the Indians in the jungles of South America and so on, and I have a great love for them.
Well, Ruhia Kanu needed a rest. The last day she was there, she insisted, I want to go for a sail in Dawnbreaker, our sailboat. And I said the wind was blowing, the waves were 6 foot high and rough, choppy. And I said, I wouldn't normally go out on a day like this, you know. She said, oh, I must sail on the Dawnbreaker. So we took her out. So we're sailing, we got up, just a jib and the mizzen, not the mainsail. And we're sailing along in this rough weather, and all of a sudden the jib rips, the stitching ripped the whole width of the sail. So I said, Gina, turn into the wind, and I had to go forward to get the sail down. So I'm up there starting to work, and I turn around, and here's Ruhia Kanu coming up the deck to come out to help me. Now this could be so dangerous. This boom can swing across and knock someone in the water. And I said, you get back in that cockpit right now. I'm telling a hand of the cause off. And she did, because I could imagine us having a hand of the cause in the water and trying to get her out in this rough water.
It would have been very difficult.
It could have been a terrible situation.
Yeah.
I think I'm the only person that's told a hand of the cause what to do.
Times are changing. The times are changing.
Gina and I wrote an opera called The Unquenchable Flame about a woman named Tahira that gave her life for the rights of women.
Yes, it's a very exciting and a very dramatic life, and we have talked about doing this for a long time. And finally we sat down and researched it. We researched about 8 books actually, and came up with our version, and we decided to call it The Unquenchable Flame because all the things that she lived for and died for, actually, for the rights of women, they could put her to death, but they could not stop the spirit of what it was that she was, you know, fighting for.
David's a genius in pure mathematics, mostly writes books and articles. And Judy is an accountant and does a lot of teaching, she and her husband.
And she said, I know now, she said, it's the Baha'i faith, isn't it, that makes your marriage like it is. And I said, yes, I believe that. And anyway, she couldn't get enough. We talked for hours. I mean hours, like 5 hours at a time. She just couldn't absorb enough. You know, it had made such an impact, the fact that she could see how different our marriage was with, like, say, her marriage. It's like we were really, technically, meant to share the life that we share together because of what we are able to accomplish together.
And it was a team all the time with Gina. He was a very lucky man to have enjoyed such an incredible relationship. And I know he would say that his life was so hugely influenced by his love of an amazing woman. I lived in awe of their relationship. Under their influence, I made the good decision to marry my wife. I remember saying to them, boy, you guys are a tough act to live up to, because they just seem to love each other so much in every conceivable way that is good about a relationship.
I had one friend say to me, we don't see 2 when we see you, we see 1. And I thought that was a big compliment. They'll come over and say, you look so happy. I mean, perfect strangers would say that, and we would be absolutely shocked. You know, we didn't realize we were looking happy or doing anything unusual, but they noticed something about us, and for that I'm very grateful. I don't know anybody that's got this wild balance that we have.
Gina was the perfect wife for me.
I got a gorgeous young Italian wife. I've got my beautiful Baha'i faith. I've got a certain amount of health. My mind still goes pretty well. Sometimes I knock on wood and say, knock, knock, knock. I hope I don't lose my short-term memory. Was that somebody knocking at the door? Anyway, I'll stop trying to be funny.
Dear Baha'i friends, the Universal House of Justice was deeply saddened to learn of the passing of dearly loved Russell Garcia. After a long life of distinguished service to the cause of God, having embraced the faith in the early years of the 10-year crusade, he and his beloved wife Gina determined to dedicate their lives to its service. Leaving Hollywood, where he had achieved renown as a composer and arranger, they embarked upon memorable, years-long travels throughout the Caribbean and the South Pacific that eventually took them to New Zealand, which became their home. In the decades that followed, he devoted himself to the creation of a range of musical composition as means of spreading the light of Baha'u'llah. His prodigious efforts in the application of artistic endeavor to the promotion of the cause will long be remembered. Kindly convey the loving sympathy of the House of Justice to Gina, to his daughter Judy and other family members, and assure them of its supplications in the holy shrines for the progress of his radiant soul throughout the divine realms.
I like to help people. I'm a Baha'i, you know, and I've dedicated my life to building a beautiful world for people all over the world. We got to have a peaceful, happy world, and somebody's got to try to help do something about it. So there's great joy in working for something that's bigger outside of yourself.